It's all about how we respond. If you want to know what we need to figure out in this world, what is the truth to what's going on, actually look at people's response to what's going on, not so much what is going on within itself. And if you notice that people are emotionally charged or egoically charged, you have to ask yourself, what is the third option, right? Is there an option that doesn't trap us in the ego or in the emotions, that isn't instinctual, but is actually responsive, not reactive, right? Being able to consciously make decisions, being able to look at the bigger picture and then go in and be able to see both sides, be able to entertain thought, not get too angry, not get too hastily, not to get too nervous, right? Or fearful to some varying degree, but really just being present and being honest and being ourselves. We can observe it in many great speakers throughout history because they were in the zone. They were really tuned in to what they were doing. And we can observe that the followers of those leaders may have not been so because they have to work on themselves. And instead of externalizing and looking up to them, they have to look at themselves and how they're responding. And a classic example of this is the order follower, right? They're responding to the order giver. And the order follower is actually the one taking out the actions, but they say, no, I was just doing what this person told me to do. So they abdicate their responsibility. They give it away. And in that process, this has been the resulting condition of many, many millions of casualties throughout history that did not need to happen. People not truly being responsible for themselves, really being conscious of their actions and looking at how they respond to things. And so this is ultimately a sign of shadow work needing to be done. If anything makes you charged, whether it's in the ego or the emotion, you have to question that. And this, I think, is very simple. You know, Scott Gordon talks about this idea of like journaling, and Leslie Powers and Stephanie Mo Davis, great individuals who have been helping people through their traumas and through their shadows for many years, doing private consultations with people who are also in truth communities who are, you know, either they felt lied to by the system, betrayed, they don't know how to get out of it, but they're also still finding themselves. They're not perfect, even once they find the so-called truth, because there's always more work to be done. And to put that work into ourselves foremost, or to emphasize that, is really important, especially if you want to talk to other people and help them. For instance, when I'm talking to people on the streets, I'm talking to college students, I'm talking to people in my town, it's a beautiful thing to learn from them, to open up to them. And if I want them to learn from me, I first must listen to them. So how I respond to them is very important to how they're going to respond to me. And it's a whole ecosystem where you have the environment and people and then you, and these all integrate into one another. And so as we take an action, even nature responds to us. So it's all about our responses, including nature's response, that tells us if we are doing the right thing, per se, if we should change our path. And by learning response as such, we are going to observe, like a philosopher, upon the world and see all the many different responses, right? Because maybe our response could absolutely be better. And I do have notes for this video. You know, I'm kind of in the flow of things. I'm better when I'm in the flow without notes, but there's some important things that I figured to address. And that is, for instance, you know, you're going to have people who respond to, say, this video or different content that gets produced out there in the world, different ideas that become increasingly relevant as things go crazy in the world. And they're going to question some things, and that's good, but they may take that to the extent of getting emotionally charged about it, or egoically charged, saying, I know better than this person, or they're wrong, and look at all these issues, and they start nitpicking on certain things, and maybe they want attention, maybe there's a bunch of other things going on in their life, I don't know, right? There can be all sorts of assumptions about what's going on about some content creator when, you know, there's like a whole separate life going on, and it could become very parasocial, and it could become toxic to some extent. And the content creator has to sit there with the haters because they know they're going to get haters, and haters are going to hate. But at the same time, because especially when it comes to truth content, as that becomes more relevant, there's going to be people who absolutely use that message for wrong, and it's going to make everybody else look bad as part of it, guilt by association, even though that's not necessarily their fault, right? Because this one person came out of this, say, community and started sharing these, say, ideas, doesn't make all the people who share those ideas and the ideas themselves wrong and not worthy to look at. And so this is something that we can even do with ideas, guilt by ideas, I would say. As we group certain ideas together, we group certain people together, and by doing so, we simplify our logic, we simplify our way of thinking, and we don't want to look at something deeper. And so we're not looking at the context, we're not looking like a philosopher anymore. And now we're just imposing. We're like, this is the way it's got to be. This is the way it is. And there's a reason why Socrates, the father of philosophy, says, I know nothing. It's a very, humility-based position where he's like, I understand that there's always more to learn. And many philosophers have, to some varying degree of this. Even in the Bible, it's like, turn your cheek, resist not evil, and people don't understand these things necessarily, right? But it's coming from like an open-minded worldview. I mean, the abolitionists were trying to convince people of non-resistance, meaning don't even resist evil. And people were like, what are you talking about? Resisting evil? Like, we have to. And some of the slaves are like, well, we have to rebel against those enslaving us. Like, we have to use violence. And they get emotionally charged over it. And they're like, well, I have the right to stand in this. And this is my freedom. But there were abolitionists who saw what problems that can lead to. And so there's always nuance to see. There's always an opposite to see. And not everybody always sees it. But those who are conscious of how other people are responding and how things have been happening, they don't have to go through that experience themselves because they are simply sitting with their awareness. They're becoming present with what's happening with other people, right? So it doesn't have to happen to themselves, and they don't have to learn necessarily from experience. And before they have that experience, they can see the signs, they can see where things are going, they can predict the future ultimately. And they can warn others of things happening when everybody says, oh, that's not going to happen. What are you talking about? Just like when I say World War III could be right around the corner any moment, because we have people who are order followers who absolutely suppress their conscience and do not look at how they're responding and do not look at their own responsibility to pay attention to how they're responding, right? So I'm giving that warning, and many people will say, oh, what are you talking about? These systems have always been here, and then they distract, and then they pivot, they go to a whole different conversation, but they aren't looking at the fact that they themselves are the very army, the very soldier, the very person who creates these systems. Instead, it's externalizing. It's this person's fault, this ideology, this or that, right? And so drama baiters and people who are coming out of the woodworks for truth and freedom ideas or anything that's becoming increasingly relevant, they're not going to get a peep out of me because it's the wrong war for me to engage in. I'm looking at how I respond. I'm going to engage with people who are open to me, people who truly care, right, about what's going on, and not people necessarily looking for the clicks and the attention and trying to cause problems, right? I look at the intentions, or at least I try, of individuals, and I ask myself questions and I observe what goes on. But I'm not going to give a peep about any sort of drama or even individuals. I don't talk about individuals on my channel. I don't even talk about events. I talk about ideas that transcend time and honestly any place of time as well. Whether it's America or Europe or Asia, the concepts I talk about transcend all of it, right? And so that's the beautiful thing about philosophy. And I think it's also humorous to see different things happen, right? And people trying to fight for their worldview and people fighting other people and, people falling into these like debates. I think it's funny. And I think that's a reason why, by the way, a lot of people watch debates. It's because it's entertainment, not necessarily because they want to improve their own knowledge or intelligence on any particular subject. Or again, just the ability to entertain thought alone can be the very thing that sharpens our intellect, and nothing really phases me because I'm able to observe things. I don't look at things as good or bad within themselves. I learn from everything. And so I've been teaching, natural law knowledge, this so-called subject, for 5+ years now. And I've been in so many different communities. I've transcended natural law in the sense of I see there's laws above laws, there's truths above truths, and some are on the lower levels and they're still trying to get up there. And as much as I could sound the alarm and say, hey guys, I'm not teaching natural law anymore, and I think you should get beyond Mark Passio's definition, I still recommend people learn from Mark Passio, even though I see problems within it. And it's simply because I see nuance, and it's about progressing. It's about never staying stuck, always being willing to improve and see new insights and perspectives, right? Which is why I also did my video on C.F. Volney and his perspectives on natural law, which I found were amazing, beautiful, right? And so, Disenthrall, he disagrees with some natural law frameworks and he created anti-subjectivism, right? C.S. Lewis talks about natural law. There's a great book called The Tao of Morality, and it talks about all these moral teachings through all these ancient frameworks. I mean, amazing stuff, and I'm not stuck on one or another. That doesn't mean it's not objective or that it's not definable. It really is about me challenging what you think you know, and the moment that you think you know, I say you've lost it. And it's being able to sit in that fact of uncomfortability, which allows us to do the most shadow work. Sitting in the fact of the idea you may not know at all, or that there is an unknown, that you find the known. And that is the beauty of it. And that is what also makes it quite humorous, which is why I use it a lot in my new book, The Arts and Book of Opposites. Humor is a great employment of truth, and this is why people like J.P. Sears or Awaken with J.P. has gotten so many followers over using, humor in tying it into worldly events. It brings also a lot of people together because it helps them think about something without getting people triggered, making direct statements and stuff. And people will get triggered and people have their own approaches. I'm not saying that, people should not be themselves. What I'm saying is that you should, despite being yourself, still be willing to improve and learn from other people's approaches. Still be able to say, could I do this better, especially if I want to reach other people? And the process of the truth is just as important as the truth itself, though they're two separate subjects, talking about what is the truth and how do you share the truth. I talked about this on my channel for years, which is why I created, Nature is the Answer, and made a whole branding out of it. And then I felt as though I was too pushy with it. And even some people were telling me that, maybe, hey, it sounds a little too businesslike. And I'm like, yeah, you're right. This is because I fell into the ego trap, the emotion trap of like, I'm right. This is the way. Natural law is the only teaching, blah, blah, blah. And I see this with a lot of individuals. And I'm warning that is not the position you want to be in if you want to improve upon your knowledge or you want to claim that you have some sort of truth. You're going to come across a lot of challenges because of it. You're going to put up a lot of divisive barriers in your way because of it. And again, I'm not saying to disregard it. I'm not saying that you should not teach it. What I'm saying is, can you see beyond it? In the same exact way, I tell you that this is a computer screen or this is a camera and you're viewing me through technology. Unless you become aware of that, you take this as reality and you mistake it as reality. I mean, you're consumed entirely into it and you can perhaps do everything on it at a certain point where you feel like reality doesn't even matter anymore. And there's no distinction between reality and the illusion anymore. So these are the things I help people, or at least I intend to help people become aware of, which is simply their own awareness, right? I talk about on my channel this idea of nature. What I mean by that too is not just the idea of morality, but the very basis, the very existence of it. Or say, a better way to put this is, people talk about freedom of speech, right? We need to have freedom of speech. I'm worried that we may not even have speech, or we may not even have freedom to begin with. But if we're looking all the way over here, we may be forgetting about the fact that we're literally losing the very thing that allows us to have that very thing. And so going back down to nature is going back down to the roots. being able to see where do things come from. You can say this is source, this is God, so it's rather important. You unveil the deceptions, you're looking into the darkness, into the silence, and yet profound truths coming from it. See, I've grown a lot, my friends. I haven't made a lot of videos because I like to observe, I like to respond consciously, and that's why sometimes I prefer scripted content, even though it's not as necessarily as human, but that's why I also like interviews, because I get to talk to somebody. And many people will say this too when they're a beginner content creator. I like to talk to somebody, right? It makes it easier. But the point is that I've grown a lot, and I've matured, I would say, in the knowledge that I've attained over the years. And I'm best offline. I'm best when I'm teaching, when I'm talking to, in a way, like a pupil, a student, somebody who's open, aware, present, asking questions. I'm asking them questions. And there's silence and there's time, and they're breeding excellence through the works that I do and through the words that I portray and through the individuals that I'm with. And then I'm being able to hold back on those emotional or egoically charged feelings and ideas and notice them, simply become present of them, and then see the need for gratitude. Because why do you get emotionally charged? Why do you want to prove a point? Why do you want to say you're right? Unless you are discontent and you need something, right? And, you can feel the energy of the world. You can feel sympathy for them. And so you're like, this is why I'm angry, because I care so much about the world. But isn't it an ironic thing to give anger in your love? Well, it's going to come up. And I'm just not saying to suppress it. I'm simply saying become aware of it. Become grateful for where you are, how you've been, to even attain that knowledge, to be able to share it. And in that gratitude, I think you will become more aware of how to go about in using it, right? We take for granted a lot of things in our life until we lose it, until something happens, the lessons of loss, as I say, right? And now my bird is talking, and they're just having fun. These animals, nature, it's amazing. And us humans are complicating things all the time. So anyways, there's this great need you see here for self-discipline. And the greatest opportunity comes from opposites, right? So you think this one way, you got to doubt yourself. I'm sorry. You got to doubt yourself. You got to question, man, I got to be wrong somewhere because I found out something that I think is the truth. I got to be wrong. I got to be wrong somehow, right? Even if it's, again, the delivery and the way you're interpreting it. Like, you have to understand, language itself is a barrier. Language itself limits ideas. Like, nature is beyond language. Right? So again, see beyond the very things that you do. Only awareness and silence can teach you this. This is literally the very concept of unschooling, which is what so many parents are doing now for their children, which is getting them out of the veils of darkness and into the light. But the light is already present, and therefore there's nothing to teach them. Nature has it so that way everybody can heal, and everybody has the blueprint to govern themselves. All we have to do is facilitate that, which means not teaching anybody anything new or saying something in a particular way. Nature should be the one telling us that. In the same way with relationships, people say, I am this person's boyfriend, girlfriend, this, I am imposing this identity, and this is what it must be, and now I have to act in this role. They now messed up the whole stinking rhythm of nature, because nature is going to give you guidance the more you're open to it through your presence. And through your gratitude. And gratitude helps a lot, like not just, with becoming aware of things, but like actually beneficial health-wise. Like, no coincidence what I'm talking about relates to health and relates to like schooling and relates to like everything, by the way. But Larkin Rose as well. I mean, through the methods of unschooling and Larkin Rose and his candles in the dark asking questions method, not one moment do you say, man, natural law needs to be taught to this person. They need to understand objective morality. Rather, it is transcending everything that you know to become your best self and recognize you're not to impose your worldview on anybody else through statism. And statism is a whole separate conversation, although it can be integrated within natural law, right? Be able to transcend your very concepts and methodologies, just as why Larkin Rose has a method of questions that can be applied even to yourself, or unschooling could be done even to the unschooler. And which is why the natural medicine practitioner doesn't claim to be an authority, right? The best doctor or teacher brings other people to their position, not keeping people independent. They negate the very thing that they are perpetrating. So if you truly are teaching natural law, you're literally not teaching natural law. I hope I'm throwing you through a twist right now, because I've taught this for a while. Okay, people are falling to ideas or succumbing to holding ideas, and I want people to get out of any ideology or attachment. I feel bad ultimately for anyone who mentions natural law or Christianity. My goodness, the quarrels that I've had with the different concepts with religions, and I am so open to them. I love them, and I love natural law. Like, I have so much love for them, and that is why, precisely why, I can see so much nuance in it. So I ask you to have the same thing, or at least I challenge you, if you can have the same thing, as this would be within itself the opposite to the condition of somebody who says Corey is wrong and we have to do this way, or this, speaking of methodology. You can debunk me using my very same arguments only to affirm it. In the same way that with voluntarism, you can say, I believe what I believe and I think it's right. And so Corey saying voluntarism is the way everybody should live, that's not right because I think something else. Literally proves voluntarism, because it's the saying that whatever you think, just don't impose it on others. You can think whatever you want. In the same way I can say, man, I don't own myself. Well, who just said that they don't own themselves? Well, me. I must have ownership to say I don't have ownership. You see, the truth reaffirms itself when it's challenged. It's not necessarily just what happened before in the past and what has always been. There's different ways to come to these conclusions, and it's beautiful when you see it. And so I've talked about the problems of objectivity. I'm not going to go into that too much, and my book of opposites talks about it too. I recommend that. But also, there's people talking about the One Great Work Network like it's a big deal. I mean, it's really just a network Mark Pastor brought together on a whim. There's not really any set structure to it, and the people who talk most about it are the people who are not in it. So I'm kind of, just whatever with that. I would love for there to be a newsletter and Mark to actually structure it and do more with it. In the same way, I can criticize Mark Pastor's classes and say, well, hey, there's these classes trying to train people to become media professional, but is it done in a certain way? Why can't we find what works best as that individual? They may not produce the same content as everybody else. They have to find out what they're truly passionate about, right? So I did my video on 30 plus content creator tips, and I think that is incredible because it helps an individual, because it starts with questions, an individual find out, for themselves, hey, what should I do if I'm going to produce content? Maybe it's something totally different. And it's that passion and that care, which Mark Pasio claims to purport, which can get distorted if you're providing a structure and saying this is how you're supposed to teach. And you have to teach because all these other people are enslaved. This is the small little nuances you have to pick up on. Again, nothing against Mark. It's just observations that I make as somebody who can see communities and see people, right? And see how they respond and how they go about things. I know people who've done these courses for years, people who talk about ideas and theories for years, but they don't actually do anything. And I'm like, just do it. Just start experimenting, start talking to people. Don't just do interviews, have fun with it, enjoy the process if you're really going to be a part of it. And if you're not part of it, you don't feel like it's your thing, that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. I change it up a lot on my channel, right? There's nothing wrong with that. And, recently there was also a funny little incident with Mark Pasio where I think somebody was impersonating me, or my account got hacked, but it was liking some post that was disrespectful of Mark. Mark saw it, and then he went on some angry rant about it to a whole class. And I'm like, well, you could confront me about that, or, I at least show proof of that, because I'm like, this is kind of just an accusation, and I heard it through other people. So, this is something that in a way I could blame Mark for it, but he didn't know. And the minute I texted him, like, I didn't do it, he's like, I believe you. So very easy. But, there's going to be people out there, like, this stuff should be expected to happen when people make influence, when people do good, and people like myself, especially, who are like not trying to create drama. The drama bears are going to pull me in, they're going to want me part of that, and, throughout school, I felt like I had this as a childhood experience. There was this one time I was accused of like punching some kid on a school bus. I was brought to the principal's office. They looked at me, they demanded, they had like this crazy stern voice. I guess this is one of my early experiences of authority. Again, being totally obedient and happy and part of the system. And I didn't rebel against anybody or anything. So to have these authority figures like yell at me and like, what did you do? And they kept trying to like interrogate me. I'm like, I swear I did nothing. This was in school. That was profound. And then there was another scenario, which is similar, right? But I watched Hell's Kitchen with my dad, and they were cutting chickens, right? And they had to like... they had to choke the chickens for the TV show, right? So the next day, there's a story about a chicken in like, I don't know, kindergarten or whatever in school. And I raised my hand and I'm like, let's choke the chicken. And then, they brought me to the side, and a bunch of weird, strange figures would just come to me in the school, talking to me like, is there something wrong? And I'm like, I don't know. I just shared what was on my mind because I watched a TV show which made me say something in that moment. So the way I responded was unconscious as a kid. And as you grow older, you, of course, become more conscious, but you look back and you're like, wait, what about the way they responded, the teachers and the authorities? They mistakenly made accusations about me, or they handled things maybe in not the best ways. Like it was very suspicious. Like all these people coming up to me, like, what's going on? Like talking to me about like this problem. Like, I'm not a bad person. I know I'm not, right? So they have to ask questions. They have to talk it through. They have to feel where I am as a child to know the best direction for me. And the child cannot be grown or nurtured unless they're listened to. So you can say, oh, you have the truth, you want to share it. It's just like, oh, water's healthy for you, but if you drink too much, you're going to die. And if you drink too little, you're going to die. In the same way, if you don't teach the child right, no matter what great ideas you have, it's not, you're going to have some issues, right? And you have to be able to learn from that and adapt. And being present is the best thing you can do, which means you have to get out of the rigid curriculums, out of the rigid ways of doing things, and being more flexible, which is, partly why we see the systems of politics and all these cultures causing problems, because they trap people. And nature doesn't want to be trapped. Evidential of just mere physics, you throw someone in a cage or an animal or an insect that wants to escape. It's in, you can say our nature, you can call it a natural law if you want, that, we want to be free. And again, you can make up your own mind on that. I think that is within itself the beautiful part that reaffirms your freedom. Right? So it's going to happen. There's going to be things. I'm afraid there's cult-like elements within, Mark Pastor's community, definitely within the common law assemblies. Oh my gosh, give me money. And if you give me money, you'll get this. And believe this because this is the way it is. And according to this document, according to what I say, and because I laid it out this way, it has to be. Like, I swear it's happening with a lot of different truth communities. Very cult-like elements. Study cults throughout history, and you understand what I'm talking about. And again, I'm not blaming Anna von Reitz or Mark or any of the people who are like the main people. I'm worried about their followers. I'm worried about the people who are responding to them. And this, again, has always been the problem in history, right? So question yourself if you say that you follow anybody or any doctrine or any teaching. This ultimately is, ironically enough, also the teachings of many of those people who have been co-opted, or their teachings co-opted for this authority structure to take place as well. So say, it's Jesus rebelling against the powers that be, and then all of a sudden Christianity comes in and says we need to build a church, and now you got to worship these priests and these documents, right? So just become aware of this. You don't have to agree with everything I'm saying, but you can see where cult-like elements comes in. Scott Gordon mentioned this on the interview with Mike Adams. We all went to Texas together in person. Awesome stuff. By the way, Mike Adams let us each take out a bag with like thousands of dollars worth of products for free. I mean, the dude is super kind. His tech team and everything, like, crazy, right? In Texas. Beautiful stuff. Anyways, you can see there, you know, an openness. He talks to everybody. He's always challenging himself. And because he's challenging himself, he's challenging other people, but he's doing so respectfully. And he's constantly reflecting on, like, how could I do it better? Or what is, you know, the better way to go about this so I can attain more information from other people, so I can learn more from them, not less. And that is beautiful to see. Like, somebody like him, he's like a great interviewer, right? So it's a perfect example. But I want you guys to avoid the cult-like elements. You know, I had people telling me, like, you want to repair what happened with what Mark said? Like, you have to make a video about objective morality. I'm not beholden to anybody. I'm not beholden to any ideology, any person, nothing, right? Because I'm just myself. And this is something that I believe is the whole point of the message of truth, is it not? Right? But again, now I have to define, what is honesty, right? I have a book about radical honesty, right? But again, I don't say this is the authority on honesty. This is what we have to teach, right? It's just so funny to me. I could sit back, and if I'm not laughing, again, it doesn't faze me. If this happened years back, you know, where Mark was accusing me of something, my heart would have been sunken in my chest, like, wait, Mark is mad at me for something I did. But no, it's like, I know I did nothing wrong in that case of the, you know, accusation of me doing something on Facebook, which I don't even use, by the way. And so it's like, whatever, you know, people can say what they say, and if people believe it, it is what it is. Mark could have said, oh man, well, I don't believe you. I would have been like, all right, whatever, because I know better. I know within my heart, my conscience, I did nothing wrong. And so big problems are going to happen. You're going to have people who call themselves anarchists or natural law anarchists or whatever, and they're going to do some crazy things to people in real life. Mark my words, there's going to be people who disrupt any movement, and they could be planted there as well, of course, right? But that's not the point. The point is that you can't group these people together, and these things are going to be expected. So it's just a matter of time. And the question is, most importantly, how do we respond? Do we say, oh my gosh, look at what happened, and oh my gosh, we got to fix this community, and oh my gosh, let's talk about it for like all day, every day for like the next week? Right? I talked about this idea of a psychologist warning the media not to do nonstop footage on shootings and stuff because it'll just cause more. Well, it looks like the media didn't really learn their lesson on that, and then it keeps happening and happening and happening. And so the way they respond is not so conscious. See, people will presume their place before watching Mark Passio's shadow work seminar. And this is going to happen to people who even watch Mark Passio's natural law seminar, which is why in the very beginning of the seminar, he says, don't judge me for the way I look. Don't judge me for this or that. Be able to discern. And he goes over the teachability bell curve. But there's also a small hidden deception in this too, because although this is true and it is right and it is something that I share as well, you can share that to only deceive people more, to get their trust more, because those people who agree with that disclaimer are more likely to say, man, you know, he's got it all together. Man, you know, he sees the nuance. So that makes him more worthy to be followed. Just pick up on these things, guys. Because people will say exactly what I'm saying here. They may even use AI. And you will be deceived as long as you're not following yourself. As long as you're not following nature itself, you're going to be deceived. It doesn't matter what it is. Okay? If it's a description of nature, it's still deceptive. Natural law is deceptive for this reason. There's a law above law. That's getting to the truth. That's what the whole word means, because once the truth becomes the truth, you no longer talk about it. The next usage of the word truth is something to attain, and not something that is here, but something that to attain that is here. Yeah, so funny how words work. So, you know, I'm not challenging or debating anyone in my interviews, and I don't intend to challenge or debate anybody in the future. I really love everyone, including Trump, by the way. And I admire people like Asmongold, who's incredibly good with navigating drama on the internet as well, while still having a stance of his own, still being grounded enough but open enough. And of course, it's not going to be perfect, but generally speaking, it's why people look up to them. And in Trump, his demeanor, the way he goes about things, and you cannot deny his great business ability. You can admire amazing things in people, and maybe even their intentions are good, right? It doesn't mean that they're actually doing good, of course, but I love everyone for who they are deep down inside, especially if they believe they're doing good and they want to do good and they're doing the best they can from their position. And then there's all these elements, like you can see and not blame anyone for the programming that they've been in. And through this compassion for them, can you help them most deprogram? Because you truly love them. I have neighbors, I have friends who totally disagree with me, who totally have different worldviews. It doesn't matter. Because at the end of the day, this is what it all comes down to, is loving your fellow man. This is the message, is it not? Right? You say, well, we have to challenge them. We have to. Be careful how you're responding right now. Become aware of this. This is what I ask you to do. I have no interests, I'm no figurehead, and I have no obligation, okay? Now, money is another thing. You know, I of course, money only came into the picture for me when it came to like Jim Gale's book that I worked with him on, and then like maybe doing stuff with movies or certain projects, Bigfoot Food Forest. But I look at money as currency, as wealth, and, you know, you don't have to actively ask for it, nor actively suppress it. It's the same thing as anything else I'm talking about. You know, we say everything should be in a balance, but what do we mean by that? We're not actively like, give me money, advertise, donate, blah, 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 but we're not actively saying, man, I should not talk about it at all. On my channel, I've done this for fun. I've done this to flow. I've done this to help people navigate through these very things, right? Money could be wealth that literally grows on trees. It could literally just be anything that you see has value. It's a material thing like anything else. You have to see beyond it. It doesn't make it useless. You have to be conscious of it. But some people focus on money. This is the thing, right? Just as statism, authority, this is the thing. I'm sorry to tell you guys, it's not just statism. There's trauma, there's inner work, there's people who can still be cult leaders and convince others and deceive them, right? And then they think it's the truth and it's not. And then, you know, they're saying, hey, I'm not an authority figure. And that's how they become an authority figure. Like, there are all sorts of sneaky little ways to get people to follow something. And this is what the rulers of our world have been very good at doing. And again, to them personally, I have nothing against them. I'd heal and help anybody, right? But we say, oh, these bad people. It's like, they're like few people maybe, right? And they have families. And then, you know, we say, oh, well, we want good family structures. It's like, yeah, they also have very good family structures. Doesn't mean it's a great thing. But of course, again, it's all navigating nuance. So now you know why I made my book, The Arts and Book of Opposites. It helps people navigate this through every little stinking thing in their life. And so the how is just as important as the what. And I hope I made that clear in this video. There's a reason why, you know, Mark is teaching people technology tools, Larkin's teaching people how to speak, aside from the information. If it wasn't important, they wouldn't do that, okay? But again, don't be limited to that methodology. Find your own, because often the ones that are unique are the ones that excel on the internet. For instance, people say, oh, that's a good idea. I should have done that, right? Happens all the time. Same thing with inventions as a whole. And so no text chats, get off of social media, stop spamming people, stop going on rants, you know, on messages, you know, actually produce content. If you're going to go on a rant, do it at least like this, maybe. No, do what you want to do, but just be aware of what you're doing. And I would just recommend no text chats. I did that in high school a lot, but it can be very deceiving. Get off social media. It's a waste of time, and especially mainstream platforms. But if it helps you and you feel like you can control it and you're conscious of it, great. Stop watching people's content. I think this is a big one. And again, be able to navigate through everything I'm saying here, but especially religiously, you should not be watching every one of my videos or every one of someone else's videos and keeping up to date on every little thing. I think that is a big thing to be aware of. And I tell people, don't watch my videos for this very reason. Ironic enough. Don't do any drugs, okay? This is very important if you want mental clarity, especially as somebody who is talking about nature. I usually mean that in a Puritan sense of like becoming original or becoming ourselves. So not being distorted and pushed toward any extreme. Drugs are often malformed from nature or taken in forms that are somewhat questionable. And then eat good, eat healthy. People generally know what that is. I don't have to explain that. Some people, again, they debate on the details. It's not what I'm here to do. Look at the big picture. Look at why people like Jordan Peterson's daughter recovered after having every problem in the world. Be able to take a step back, go into nature. Obviously, nature is the answer. And just easy living, flow, exercise. You want to exercise the brain? Exercise the body. One of the best things you can do. So instead of texting and going into all these metaphysical discussions or whatever, exercise, have fun. Plato said you can learn more in a year of conversation and just an hour of play. Why did he say that? It's because, again, silence, presence, beyond word is going to help us in a lot of ways. How many times has Stephanie Mo Davis, as a yoga teacher, experienced people melt down after a yoga session? How come soma therapy was banned in Brazil for creating anarchists accidentally? Because they were helping people gain strength and connect with other people. Larkin Rose became an accidental anarchist. You have to help other people become an accidental anarchist, not an intentional anarchist. Because if it's the truth and anarchy is reality or present, it needs no explaining. It needs no ideology. It needs only presence. Jim Gale said he studied hundreds of thousands of books, and the one thing he knows most is presence is the answer. So be a philosopher, observe, study, learn. Don't judge, expect, label, etc. This is going to limit your perception. It's going to prevent your learning. Learn from nature, not from me or anything or anyone. You can learn from everything and everyone, but not anything or any one particular thing. So I want my channel to be for everyone. I'm going to change it up because I don't want to be an echo chamber. I don't want to talk about select ideas. This is how I respond. And I hope you appreciate that because I care for everybody. And I want to show true love. And I want to show my openness and myself by literally never attaching to one thing, but just merely being myself and enjoying the process. Pretty light, easy living flow, right? Oh, it's got to be super hard. We got to convince the whole world. Listen, I know about this, but if I worry about that, I'll be stressing all day. My content won't be as good. And people are going to see the anger in me. It's going to draw people away. People are going to feel it, right? And it's going to have effects in my personal life as well. How many people have close families? How many people have strong relationships? Okay, so don't take my word and just throw it away. I really deeply ask you to consider what I'm saying. And in the description below, I'll have an AI that you can talk to that is based off of my new book. So you can ask any question you want and see what response it gives to you. Okay, so if you have anything that comes to mind, literally anything, just ask it. See what happens. I don't know if that'll help, but otherwise you can check out the book, The Arts in Book of Opposites. And I hope I explained some rather important things and observations that I've noticed. And thank you everybody for watching. This is a beautiful life and I want people to enjoy it and look at the beauty of it, because that's how we're going to really show it to a lot of other people. Is once we start seeing that beauty and we say, man, amazing, amazing, amazingness, look at the architecture, look at the music, look at how it makes people feel. There's a lot to be positive about in a world where you might see a lot of negativity. You don't have to let that be your perception, right? Doesn't mean you ignore the negativity. Oh boy, the assumptions people will make on the littlest of words. This only tells you more about their mentality. Learn about how you respond, how other people respond, and we will best be able to respond to all of the world's biggest problems and challenges. Thank you very much for watching. Corey Enderlot, nature is the answer.